Welcome to our quantum deep dive.
Hello.
Today, we're plunging into the really incredible world of quantum microscopy, and we're using an insightful essay by Yorgo Schneepat as our guide for this exploration.
Yeah, and our mission is pretty straightforward, really.
Yeah.
We want to unpack the core ideas in this essay, understand exactly how quantum mechanics is fundamentally changing the way we image the smallest things imaginable.
Right.
We'll look at the cool technologies making this possible and maybe, most importantly, why this matters across so many different fields. Think of this as your fast track to getting up to speed on this cutting-edge area.
Definitely. Because for a long time, classical microscopy, it's amazing, but it hit some hard limits. The most famous one is probably the diffraction limit. That fundamental barrier that stops you from seeing details smaller than, about half the wavelength of the light you're using? But quantum microscopy, that's promising to, shatter those limits, potentially showing us atomic and even subatomic details we just couldn't see before. So get ready for some truly eye-opening moments, I think.
Okay, let's maybe trace the path that brought us here.
Yeah.
Because the ideas powering this field, they have roots that go way back, over a century actually, right to the very dawn of quantum mechanics.
So we're talking pioneers like Max Planck and Albert Einstein.
Exactly. Einstein's work on the photoelectric effect was, absolutely fundamental, showing that light isn't just a wave. It comes in these discrete packets, particles called photons.
Right.
And understanding and controlling these quantum light particles is just crucial for quantum imaging.
So the bedrock was laid by these early quantum giants, and then came another massive leap: entanglement.
Yeah.
This is that famously weird quantum thing where particles become linked, their fates intertwine no matter how far apart they are. What Einstein called spooky action at a distance.
That's the one. The concept was explored by Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen with their EPR paradox. And then later, John Bell showed how you could actually test for this connection experimentally.
Okay.
And what's fascinating, and the essay touches on this, is seeing how these purely theoretical ideas, born, decades ago, slowly, painstakingly began to be harnessed for practical tools, like microscopy.
So it took a while.
Oh, yeah. The essay points out it wasn't until the 1990s that we saw the first real experimental demonstrations using entangled photons to get higher resolution images than classical methods. It really took decades for the technology to catch up with the physics.
And during that time, other quantum-based imaging methods were also popping up, kind of laying more groundwork. The essay mentions the scanning tunneling microscope, the STM.
Yes, developed by Binning and Rohrer in the 1980s. That was huge, using quantum tunneling. That effect where a particle can pass through a barrier it classically shouldn't be able to.
Right.
To actually image surfaces atom by atom. A massive step. And then more recently, maybe starting in the 2000s, we saw the rise of using something called NV centers in diamonds.
NV centers.
Nitrogen vacancy centers. They leverage the quantum properties of specific defects within a diamond crystal for atomic level imaging and incredibly sensitive sensing. These kinds of innovations really set the stage for the explosion we're seeing now in quantum microscopy.
So let's dive into those core quantum principles the essay highlights. There are three big ones, right? First, the uncertainty principle, Heisenberg. We often think of this as just a limit. You can't know a particle's position and its momentum precisely at the same time.
And that's true. It is a fundamental limit. But what's brilliant, and what the essay really emphasizes, is that in quantum microscopy, physicists aren't just, bumping up against this limit. They're finding clever ways to work with it.
How so?
They're using the principles that lead to that uncertainty as a basis for innovative imaging methods that can actually overcome classical restrictions. It's kind of paradoxical, using a limit as a foundation for new possibilities.
Okay, that's where it gets really interesting. Using a limit to make breakthroughs. What's the next principle?
Next up is entanglement, which we mentioned, those link particles. The essay explains how using entangled photon pairs can dramatically improve image quality, particularly resolution and signal detection.
And how does that work exactly? How do tangled photons give you a better picture than just, say, throwing more light at it?
Well, it's because of their correlation,
Yeah.
right? Classically, the clarity of your image, your signal-to-noise ratio, it improves, but only with the square root of the number of photons you use, the shot noise limit.
Okay.
It's like adding more independent flashlights. Yeah, it gets brighter, but the noise increases too, relatively speaking. But with entangled photons, because they're linked, you can use those correlations to essentially beat that classical limit.
Oh, I see.
You get more information and less relative noise from the same number of photons, which means significantly clearer images, especially when you're looking at very faint details or maybe working with delicate samples.
That's a huge advantage, especially for biology. Okay, and the third key principle, superposition.
Right, that mind-bending idea that a quantum system can exist in multiple states simultaneously until you actually measure it. The essay notes how this is applied in quantum microscopy to basically extract information from different system states all at once. So instead of taking one measurement then another, you can kind of tap into multiple possibilities simultaneously.
Which saves time or improves precision.
Both, really. It significantly boosts the efficiency and the precision of the imaging process, allows researchers to gather more comprehensive data faster or maybe with less light exposure, which is crucial for sensitive things.
The essay also mentions quantum optics, right? That interaction between light and matter at the quantum level.
Exactly. You need that. Think about how those NV centers emit light, or how entangled photons are generated and controlled. It's all about manipulating these really delicate quantum interactions.
And that relies on new tech.
Absolutely. This is only possible because of major modern technological progress. The essay highlights things like ultra-short pulse lasers. You need those to precisely control quantum states, and these incredibly sensitive superconducting detectors.
Superconducting.
Yeah, things that can register single photons or measure tiny magnetic fields with just exquisite precision. These tools are absolutely essential for making theoretical quantum ideas actually work in the lab.
So let's bring it back to the core problem, those classical limits. What's the big breakthrough here compared to a really good conventional microscope?
The main thing is smashing that diffraction limit we talked about earlier. Classical optics, described by the Abbe equation, it fundamentally limits how small an object you can resolve clearly. It depends on the wavelength of light.
So visible light can only get you so far.
Right. You just can't see things much smaller than a few hundred nanometers clearly. Fine for cells, maybe, but useless for atoms or most molecules.
And quantum microscopy just bypasses that.
It completely surpasses it. By using effects like entangled photons or clever subwavelength techniques that exploit those quantum correlations, it can achieve resolutions far, far below the classical diffraction barrier. Plus, as we said, you get higher sensitivity and precision.
Which means much better image quality, finally resolving details at the atomic and molecular scale that were just blurry before.
Or completely invisible, which is why it's becoming indispensable for fundamental research, looking at matter at its most basic level.
Okay, so how is this actually being done? The essay goes into some key technologies. Quantum dots, for instance.
Quantum dots. They're fascinating. These tiny semiconductor nanocrystals.
And they act like tiny, tunable light sources, right? Their optical property is that the color of light they emit depends on their size and shape.
Exactly. Makes them incredibly useful as light-emitting probes, especially in biological imaging. You can attach them to molecules or structures inside cells.
So you can see things like subcellular compartments or track molecules moving around.
Precisely. Track molecular processes in real time, or even do long-term studies, because these quantum dots are incredibly stable compared to traditional dyes.
The essay mentions they're used in material science, too, like looking at nanocomposites or semiconductor defects.
Yep. Their advantages are huge. Photostability, they don't fade quickly. High brightness, strong signal. Tunable emission, pick your color. And a longer lifetime for extended observations. Big improvements over older methods.
Okay, what about quantum sensors and detectors? The essay mentions those NV centers in diamonds again.
Right, the nitrogen vacancy centers. A nitrogen atom next to an empty spot in the diamond lattice.
And their superpower is sensitivity.
Extreme sensitivity. Their quantum spin state is incredibly sensitive to tiny changes in their local environment. Magnetic fields, electric fields, temperature. And you can read out that spin state using light.
So they're like tiny atomic scale probes.
Exactly. Amazing sensors. Used for ultra-precise magnetometry, measuring incredibly weak magnetic fields, temperature sensing, and as probes for biomedical imaging, often getting down to atomic resolution.
Then there are superconducting systems, like SQUIDs.
SQUIDs, yeah. Superconducting quantum interference devices. Basically, the most sensitive magnetometers we have. They rely on quantum phenomena related to superconductivity, like Josephson effects.
And they measure even weaker fields.
Some of the weakest magnetic fields imaginable, really valuable in material science and even biology, looking at biomagnetic signals, for example. The theory behind them involves how electrons behave in superconductors, and they can even detect quantum information directly.
So we have quantum dots for probing, NV centers, and square wides for sensing. And entanglement, again, the essay emphasizes how that improves the signal-to-noise ratio.
Right, it reinforces that point. Using entangled photons gives you that clear picture, beating the classical limit because the photons are correlated, better signal for the same amount of light, essentially.
And this leads to new imaging techniques. The essay mentions ghost imaging.
Yeah, and quantum optical coherence tomography, QOCT. Ghost imaging sounds weird, I know.
It does. How does it work?
Well, basically, the photons that light up the object you want to see don't actually go to the camera that forms the image.
Wait, what?
Yeah. The image is reconstructed by correlating the light that did hit the object with a separate entangled beam of light that didn't interact with the object at all.
That sounds impossible.
It's totally counterintuitive. But because of the quantum correlations, you can reconstruct an image, often with higher resolution and less noise than you'd expect. QOCT uses similar ideas with entangled photons for high-res 3D images with minimal sample damage. Great for tissues.
Okay, these techniques sound really promising, especially for delicate samples or analyzing nanostructures.
Right, so this is all fascinating physics and engineering, but let's connect it back to why you, the listener, should care. How is this revolutionizing different fields? Let's start with biomedical research.
Yeah, this seems huge. That incredible resolution lets us see subcellular structures, proteins, organelles, even watch molecular processes in living cells using things like quantum dots or NV centers.
And you gain new insights by measuring those tiny magnetic fields or temperature changes inside a cell, understanding things like intracellular transport or how ion channels work at a level never possible before.
The essay gives a specific example, using quantum fluorescence markers to map how DNA interacts with other molecules at high resolution. Imagine actually seeing genes being regulated.
Exactly. And think about diagnostics. Measuring those incredibly weak biomagnetic fields could lead to non-invasive detection of diseases. The essay mentions things like Alzheimer's or cardiac arrhythmias potentially being detected earlier using NZ centers.
Wow.
Or using quantum dots for targeted tumor marking. They're so bright and stable, they can allow much better imaging of tumors, maybe even guide therapies more precisely. Imagine diagnosing diseases far earlier or targeting treatments right where they need to go.
Okay, moving to material sciences. This seems like a natural fit.
Absolutely essential. It lets researchers analyze atomic structures and defects in materials like semiconductors, graphene, topological insulators. Seeing the atoms and understanding their electronic states is critical for developing future materials.
So it helps us understand existing materials better, but also design new ones.
Exactly. By imaging atomic interactions and electronic properties in real time, scientists can engineer materials with specific, tailored properties. The essay highlights this for breakthroughs in superconductors, energy storage, novel nanostructures.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Optimizing quantum dots themselves for better solar cells, understanding energy transfer at the quantum level. Or developing metamaterials, these engineered materials with completely unnatural properties. This is literally how we're building the components for next-gen electronics, energy systems, maybe even super strong materials.
And the essay also mentions environmental and geosciences. That's maybe less obvious.
Yeah, but it's proving incredibly powerful there, too. Quantum microscopy allows analysis of nanostructures in natural samples, minerals, sediments. You can use NV centers, for instance, to study tiny magnetic bits in rocks.
What does that tell us?
It gives insights into ancient Earth processes, like changes in the planet's magnetic field billions of years ago, or tectonic activity. You can also study things like biocorrosion or microbes in extreme environments at a molecular level.
Environmental monitoring.
Hugely important. Those super-sensitive quantum sensors can detect incredibly low levels of pollutants. Heavy metals, pesticides, microplastics in water, air, soil. Much earlier detection is possible. And entangled photons can help analyze aerosols in the air, figuring out their size and chemistry precisely. That data is critical for understanding air quality and fighting pollution. So yeah, from the planet's past to protecting its future, this tech is key.
And finally, fundamental research itself benefits.
Oh, absolutely. It gives scientists a direct window into quantum phenomena that were previously only studied indirectly, like imaging quantum tunneling directly, or looking at exotic states of matter like Bose-Einstein condensates. This helps refine our theories about how the universe works. The essay mentions using it to study electrons in high-temp superconductors, hoping for insights into lossless energy transfer.
And it helps build other quantum tech.
Indispensable for that. If you want to build a quantum computer, you need to see and control qubits, right? Quantum microscopy helps analyze qubits, understand decoherence, why they lose their quantumness, control their spin states.
I see.
And it aids in developing quantum communication and cryptography by allowing precise control and analysis of the quantum states used for secure data transmission. It's giving us the tools to not just study the quantum world, but to build with it. The future of computing, communication, sensing. It relies on this.
Now, the essay is realistic. It points out significant challenges, right? Technological hurdles.
Absolutely. It's not easy. Creating perfect NV centers, operating superconducting detectors, these things are complex and very expensive. Scaling them up, getting them out of specialized labs into more common use, that's a major challenge. We need more cost-effective, standardized solutions.
And these quantum systems are famously delicate. Stability and precision must be hard to maintain.
Extremely hard. They're so sensitive to tiny noises, vibrations, temperature fluctuations, stray fields. Getting reproducible results is tough outside highly controlled environments. They often need complex calibration, too.
So what are the solutions?
Well, the essay suggests things like better system design, better shielding, damping vibrations, and developing new quantum materials that are inherently more robust, less sensitive to their surroundings.
The essay also stresses collaboration, doesn't it? This isn't just physics.
Not at all. It's fundamentally interdisciplinary. You need the physicists for the quantum principle, engineers for the instruments, material scientists for the probes, biologists or chemists to apply it. Close cooperation is vital. Maybe dedicated interdisciplinary centers are needed to really accelerate progress.
But despite the challenges, the potential breakthroughs seem, well, staggering.
They really are. New applications are constantly emerging. Think about taking those sensors out of the lab, portable quantum microscopes for environmental testing on-site, or molecular-level medical diagnostics in a clinic someday.
Real-time monitoring of chemical reaction.
Exactly, or manufacturing processes at the atomic scale, and just continuing to design new materials with properties specified right down to the atom.
And the essay mentions AI and machine learning playing a big role.
Increasingly vital, yes. AI is helping optimize the imaging process itself, recognize complex patterns in the massive data sets these microscopes generate. Well, AI and ML can help automate experiments, analyze and compensate for noise in real time to improve stability, maybe even help discover new physics or optimize experiments in ways humans wouldn't think of. It's going to be a key partner moving forward.
Okay, so let's try to wrap up this deep dive. The essay by Yorgos Nepet paints a really clear picture. Quantum microscopy isn't just a small step. It's genuinely revolutionary.
Yeah, it breaks through those fundamental classical limits by cleverly harnessing quantum principles, uncertainty, entanglement, superposition, and key technologies like quantum dots, NV centers, squares, and entangled photons are the tools making it happen.
And its impact is incredibly broad, changing research and applications across basically all of science and engineering, a truly interdisciplinary field.
The essay makes a strong case that this field is really poised to have a major impact on science and society in the coming decades.
Okay.
Think about more precise medical diagnoses, the creation of totally novel materials, better environmental monitoring.
And directly advancing quantum tech itself, computing, communication, sensing.
Exactly. Its ability to reveal atomic and molecular details is just vital for all these future advancements.
The future outlook, based on the essay, seems to be about continued progress, maybe integrating quantum mechanics even more tightly with AI, ML, nanotechnology.
Possibly leading to more portable systems, real-time analysis, maybe even integration into larger quantum networks someday.
And hopefully a big push to make these amazing tools less expensive and more widely available.
That's the goal, moving them beyond just the elite research labs into broader industrial and commercial use.
So here's a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe ponder. As we keep combining these fundamental quantum principles with powerful tech like AI, what previously unimagined questions about reality itself, about life, about the ultimate nature of materials, could quantum microscopy help us finally answer? What's next that was completely beyond our sight before?
This has been our deep dive into the fascinating world of quantum microscopy, guided by the insights from the essay by Yorgos Nepet.
It's definitely a complex and exciting area. Hopefully we've given you a clearer perspective on its significance and its really enormous potential.
Thank you for joining us.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.